Hello, I'd like to welcome you to the advocacy portion of our Flasco Living with Cancer series presentation tonight. My name is Michael Diaz, and I'm a medical oncologist and hematologist. I'm the Flasco Director of Patient Advocacy and a past president of Flasco. I practice medical oncology and hematology in St. Petersburg, Florida with Florida Cancer Specialists. And we're here today to talk about something that's pretty near and dear to my heart, and it has to do with patient advocacy. And so first of all, I'd like to start off more from the big picture perspective. I've had people tell me in the past, well, Mike, talk about advocacy. Tell them what it means. Well, I looked up the definition of advocacy in the dictionary, and all it says is to advocate. Very helpful, huh? So let me just explain. So advocacy, as far as I'm concerned, yeah, it's a general concept, but it means to advocate for, which means you're trying to do something to benefit somebody, whether it be yourself or somebody else. In fact, you all being here tonight to educate yourselves means you're advocating for yourself in the form of education, educational advocacy about a condition that might mean something to you or someone you know or care about. So yes, there's educational advocacy. Your doctors will also most likely advocate for you whenever they're fighting insurance companies to get scans or medications or therapies or testings approved. We really don't get paid any money to do that, and that's we either have to hire staff to do that or we do a lot of it ourselves too, but we're advocating for you. The way, and there are many other ways besides education, you can advocate for family members. You can help assist with certain components of their care, and all that is advocating. And there are lots of ways to do that. The main way that I like to advocate for my cancer patients, because that's one of the reasons why I love being a doctor. In my free time, which is not a lot of, but I do spend a lot of time doing it, is I advocate for my patients when it comes to healthcare reform. One of the things that I noticed as I was going through my training as a young oncologist is that it didn't seem to me that there were a lot of healthcare providers involved with the policy decision-making process that would impact patient care, patients' health care, or their access to care. And one of the things that I've been doing since I've been practicing medicine for a little over 15 years now, I've been getting more and more involved with advocating for healthcare reform so that patients have access to affordable quality healthcare that's close to home. I'm a firm believer that we have enough resources in this country. There's no reason why people shouldn't have to spend their life savings or refinance their house just to get their cancer care. I think it's ridiculous. I personally think that the system is flawed in a lot of ways, and I think that there are a lot of people who are getting a disproportionate share of the resources, and those are not the patients, and I personally don't think they're the providers either. So that's one of the reasons why I'm involved with healthcare reform. And we do it in a lot of ways. I work with organizations of like-minded individuals, whether it be other oncologists or pharmacists. We have organizations. We work to advocate here in Flasco, mainly at a state level and also at a national level. But I do work with other organizations for synergy. And it all has to do with in understanding the healthcare system, which is extremely overly complicated. It needs to be fixed, but it's what we have, and we have to understand it to understand where the problems are so we know where we can fix things. So if we need to, instead of guessing, we will perform studies or commission studies to be done to better understand the little nuances of how potential things are impacting patient care or access to patient care. And then we also spend a lot of time educating our elected officials on this process, whether it be local in Tallahassee, whether it be going to DC, which we don't do a lot of traveling now, but I would go to DC at least twice a month to help educate our elected officials there. We have to network a lot with Health and Human Services as well as Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And at a state level, we have to work a lot with the governor's office, the insurance commissioner, as well as Florida Medicaid for a lot of patient issues. And just to give you an idea of how effective you can be sometimes, for those of you all that aren't aware, about 4 years ago, the previous administration attempted a demonstration project that we will call the Part B Medicare Demonstration Project. And they thought, oh, we're going to save money. We're going to reduce the cost of care. And unfortunately, all it would have been doing was restricting access of care to possibly 50 to 75% of Medicare patients across the country, because it basically refused to pay for the more expensive treatments. Well, if you have cancer, you know that a lot of the time, the most effective treatments are the more recent treatments and are going to be the more effective treatments. Well, they were going to try to encourage you to use more generic medications. Well, the generic medications in cancer care are over 10 or 15 years old, and they're fairly outdated and not usually as effective as the newer medications. So it would have negatively impacted patient care. We went to grassroots across the country. We had to have all of our patients contact their representatives and their senators and tell them that they needed to shut this down. We were very successful in that it never took place. In fact, the following year, I went to meet one of our senator's healthcare aides, and she said, you don't need to introduce yourself to me. Because of you, I had over 3,000 emails in my inbox. My email was locked. My email account was locked for several weeks. She said, you did a great job with that. The senator wasn't listening to me, but when he saw how many people were concerned about this project, he said he realized he had to listen. So we can work together, and we'll talk more about that. I would like to move the discussion onto a more timely, more relevant, more current issue, which is known as pharmacy benefit managers. And most people aren't aware of even what a pharmacy benefit manager is. And just to give you a little background, the pharmacy benefit managers are who your insurance companies hire to manage your oral prescription benefits. They started off as just claims processors back in the 80s and 90s. All they would do is process insurance claims for oral medications. Well, over time, they evolved, they coalesced, they merged to the point to where there are essentially 3 pharmacy benefit managers that manage the oral prescription benefits for nearly 80% of all Americans. That's a lot of control and influence. Well, what happens when you have this control and influence? Stay tuned, we'll talk more about that. But these pharmacy benefit managers are so lucrative from a business perspective that they are merging with the top largest insurer companies in the country. In that one of the largest pharmacy benefit managers, CVS Caremark, recently bought one of the nation's largest insurance companies, Aetna. Well, 3 of the largest pharmacy benefit managers are owned or own some of the top 4 largest insurance companies in this country. So there's a lot of vertical integration going on. And it's because this component of healthcare has become so profitable. It's like, well, why has it become so profitable? Well, these pharmacy benefit managers, and more we're learning about this. In fact, this gets us to something that's near and dear to my heart, the price of drugs. I think the price of drugs are crazy. They're astronomical. They're very high. And it's difficult for patients to get their care because these newer medications and treatments cost so much. Well, studies are showing that when it comes to brand name drugs, we don't even talk about generics. It's a lot more complicated. Brand name drugs, probably well over 50% of the cost of any drug, whether it be oral drug or IV drug, over 50% of that is going to somebody else as a rebate. Yes, over half the cost of drugs. So if you're on a drug that costs $1,000 a month, over $500 of that is going to a rebate in somebody else's pocket, not the pharmaceutical company's pocket. So a lot of people like to complain to the pharmaceutical companies about drug prices, and I'm not letting them off the hook. But when I meet and I talk with a lot of the senior national executives in pharmaceutical companies, and they're aware of my stance that drug prices are too high and they need to get them under control and they need to do something about it. But part of the reason why the costs are so high is because of these rebates that are given out. Well, these rebates are from the drug companies, but they have to be built into the cost of the drug. And one of the nation's largest recipient of rebates are these pharmacy benefit managers and or insurance companies. Yes, the US government via Medicaid and the VA healthcare system, they get some rebates. And they are a decent sized percentage of those rebates, but nowhere near as large as the rest of the rebates. In fact, some studies are showing that well over $150 billion a year in 2019 dollars was spent on rebates. And that's one of the reasons why the cost of drugs are so high. And when I talk with the senior people in pharmaceutical companies, they are somewhat traumatized after they have discussions with these pharmacy benefit managers, because they have to talk with them and set up contracts before the pharmacy benefit manager will make their new medication available to the lives that they cover. And this is a typical comment I hear about that a pharmacy benefit manager would tell a pharmaceutical company. Wow, we really like that drug, your new drug. It's great, and we'd love for our patients to have access to it. But they need to know that we're working for them. So up front, we want you to give us a 10% discount off of the price so they can see we're working for them. And then after they've paid their copay, and after all the claims have been processed, on the back end, we want a 50% rebate. Otherwise, they will not even know your drug exists from us. And so these guys, they want their drugs to be available. And like I said, 3 of the largest pharmacy benefit managers control nearly 80% of the prescription benefits. If you don't let them have what they want or some version of it, your drug's not going to see a lot of patients, or not even have the possibility to be used for a lot of patients. And so there's definitely an issue with the rebate system going on. But also on the other end, the pharmacy benefit manager will also go after the providers. When I say the providers, the pharmacists, or in the case of cancer patients, if the cancer doctors are providing the drug, even the oncologist. They like to come back to us about months after the transaction occurred, i.e. the prescription was given, and they'll just come back and say to the provider, either the cancer doctor or the pharmacy, and say, yeah, you owe us 10% of all this money. And it's like, why do we owe you 10%? So, well, you didn't meet quality measures. And this is exactly what was told to my practice. You didn't meet quality measures. It's like, we didn't know that there were quality measures. They said, well, you're correct. There's not any oncology or cancer specific quality measures. So, we looked at the cancer patients that you're taking care of, our cancer patients that you're taking care of, and we looked at their adherence rates to blood pressure medications, diabetes medications, and cholesterol medications. And well, they were all perfect and they were adhering to their medications. So we couldn't use that data. So we looked at the entire Southwest Florida regional adherence rate to blood pressure medications, to diabetes medications, and cholesterol medications, and we applied that to you. And because the compliance rate in Southwest Florida is not very good, you've got to pay this penalty. And, my people know that if we don't pay this, what's called a DIR fee, direct and indirect remuneration fee, then we get kicked out of network. We can't take care of our patients. And trust me, if we can provide the oral medications to our patients, they will have much better patient care than if it's provided by some third-party specialty pharmacy that's nowhere near here, that knows nothing about patients or patients' care. So we do what we can on our end to try to sustain those fees. But those are just examples. Now, that's how they affect the business end of thing. That's how they affect the pricing end of thing. But in order for these pharmacy benefit managers to make more money and to steer more traffic towards certain products, they develop these formularies. And these formularies are, I guess you could say, their versions of preferred drug lists, and that drugs that they like, and some might even say, yes, that might be the appropriate indication for the drug, but are they getting higher rebates on this drug, and that's why they like it or not? We don't know. All that information is privileged and considered to be proprietary. But they have these formularies, and we're seeing perfect examples of how these formularies that they're trying to implement on cancer patients, they don't really work. You have cancer, you know that you may have other unique healthcare conditions, and it's not like there's a plethora of medications with which you can choose from, which some might consider to be your best treatment option. Why? Because different medications have different adverse side effects, and some may have an adverse side effect profile that may be detrimental to you given your unique health characteristics, or may not be better for you given your unique cancer. And so it's very difficult to say that just because I have cancer and it is cancer type X, that you should always start off with this one medication that these pharmacy benefit managers are saying you should start off with. And I can give you a perfect example. Let's tie it into patients. One of the things that we do is that we collect what's called patient PBM horror stories. And I do want you to know, if you have had any of these horror stories, as I will be talking about in a minute, please type in the little text box your name so that we can, and the best way to reach you, so that we can reach out to you at Flasco and get your horror story recorded. We do this at the Flasco level. We do it at a national level. I do it with a national organization I work with called Community Oncology Alliance. If you go to pbmabuses.org, that's P as in Paul, pbmabuses.org, you can see, unfortunately, volumes of horror stories that have resulted from these pharmacy benefit managers negatively impacting patient care. Just to give you an example, getting back to the formularies that we were talking about, we have several examples that have even happened here in Florida where a patient with a condition and other cancer and other medical conditions, for example, like bad kidney disease, should be getting, if you look according to routine formularies and what's considered to be the #1 line of therapy, a medication that its #1 side effect is that it can impact the kidneys, okay? Well, one of my partners saw this patient and realized, wait, this patient needs this medication. It could impact the kidneys. They have bad kidneys. Then maybe we need to start them on the second line medication first, period, and avoid this potentially more dangerous one. They sent the patient to a local cancer center of expertise, and their specialist in this cancer said, yeah, you can't have that #1, that first drug, that first medication. You need to start off with the one second on the list because it could hurt the kidneys. Well, it took the pharmacy benefit manager over 2 months to approve the medication because it was denied because it wasn't #1 on their formulary list. So we have several examples of where they can delay access to timely care. We even have examples nationally of patients just dying while they're waiting for their medication to arrive. An unfortunate example of a patient who waited 9 weeks for a routine metastatic breast cancer medication to arrive, but the pharmacy benefit manager fought with the provider for so long, the patient gave up after 8 weeks, went into hospice. The medication showed up just after that, but the patient was too weak to even take the medication. We have other examples of where the pharmacy benefit manager, I have 2 examples in my practice, not with me, but with 2 of my partners, of where the pharmacy benefit manager actually said, no, we know this medication is front line and is the first one that's listed to be used, but we think the patient should have surgery first. And in both instances, even the surgeon and the medical oncologist said, no, surgery is contraindicated in this patient. They said, well, no, we think the patient should have surgery first. So they're making a medical decision without even seeing the patient. They're making a medical decision without a license to practice medicine. And that's one of the things they're doing to save money and to help their bottom line. These guys are businesses. They took an oath to their shareholders. They did not take an oath to patients like the doctors did. And so if you have a horror story, please type it in on the question box so that the people from Flasco can contact you, hear your horror story so we can get it documented. We need to have these documented. And part of the reason why is that we are working on trying to reform the healthcare system as far as these pharmacy benefit managers are concerned. We're working both at a state level and at a national level. To give you an idea of what we've been doing at a state level, in fact, we've been coordinating with other healthcare advocacy organizations, and we attempted to have legislation passed last year for pharmacy benefit managers. It would have held and made sure there was transparency as well as accountability, because right now there's no transparency. I was in DC a couple of years ago and was talking with some key staffers on both the Senate and the House, and they said, yeah, the pharmacy benefit managers people were up here yesterday and they were lighting their hair on fire saying, oh no, we can't be transparent. That will disclose proprietary information. We won't be able to save money. There's no way we can be transparent. Well, this is healthcare. Everybody needs it. And if you have to be that transparent, then is there a reason for that? So we want reasonable transparency and we wanted accountability. And unfortunately, that bill did not pass. It did not go up for vote in the House or the Senate. But we will be working on that again for next year. And that's one of the reasons why I want to grab your attention. We will be working on that next year, and we will need your help with reaching out to your legislature, your state representative and your state senator, so that they will know they need to support this bill. Now, with that being said, to give you a little bit more of an idea of how conniving these pharmacy benefit managers can be, one of our other organizations developed a study looking at Florida alone, just to better understand how these pharmacy benefit managers worked in the Medicaid system that's run by the state. And just in one example, with a generic medicine, they saw that the pharmacy benefit manager was paying a pharmacy that they didn't have a preferred contract with. They're paying this pharmacy approximately 20 cents a pill for generic medicine the patient needs to take twice a day. And they were paying a pharmacy that they had a contract with. Now you got to keep in mind, this contract that they have with the pharmacy is not accessible to the public. Why? Because it's proprietary. Well, they were paying them $10 a pill. And when you sit down and you look at things, it would not be reasonable, given the fact this medication is taken twice a day, every day, within a year, if you assume a reasonable number of patients are on this medicine, it's a commonly used medicine, very commonly used medicine, that it wouldn't be reasonable for there to be a $30 million discrepancy going into this preferred pharmacy's pocket. So that has caused a lot of uproar in Florida. That was not able to get this legislation passed, but it was able to get the governor to hire a nationally renowned actuarial firm to do their own study to validate and verify what this other study has seen. If there's that large of a discrepancy, then if it's the taxpayers' dollars, I think the taxpayer deserves to know, why is this pharmacy getting paid so much more for pill than your average pharmacy? Okay, that stuff needs to be known. There's been a lot of reform going on at the state levels because of little tactics like this, especially in Florida, especially in Ohio and Georgia. We want Florida to be next, and so we'll be reaching out to you to advocate more next year. We're also working at a national level in DC with a couple of different bills, a couple of pieces of legislation, one so that patients could get their drug within 48 hours, and they wouldn't be waiting several weeks or even months to get their medication. Now, some of that stuff's been put on hold because of COVID, but we plan on bringing that up at the beginning of next year, because right now, with the way things are in DC, not a lot's happening at all within the next several months because of COVID, because of the elections, but we are working on it as we can. So your involvement is essential. As I told you with the example, when it comes to healthcare reform, if your elected official hears about you, the voter, and they hear that you are concerned, they will listen. And we are planning on this next year, for this next 2021 legislative session, we are planning on having a bill introduced to help reform pharmacy benefit managers. But we need to have a coordinated effort, because there might be more than one bill out there. We want to make sure that you are sponsoring the correct bill. We want to make sure that you know why. So it's a good idea, I think it would be, if you are interested and want to help verbalize your opinion as a voter to your elected officials, that you put your name and email in the question box. Let them know you want the monthly newsletter. It's a monthly patient newsletter. That's one way to stay updated. Not only will you learn about advocacy issues, but you will learn updates about all the different things that we talked about today. And just as well, you can go to the website at www.patients.flasco.org to learn more about not only advocacy information, the things that I'm talking about here today. Once again, it's to make sure there's a coordinated effort so that you know when to reach out to your elected official, you know what to talk about, you know which bill to tell them they need to support, but it's also to learn more about other things for patients, such as assistance programs, various support groups, as well as clinical trials, and yes, of course, something important and dear to me, information about advocacy. And also, we plan on notifying all the patients that have participated in these Living with Cancer series when there is a time we need to call them to action, because you can help us, the providers, make sure that you have access to care that's affordable, quality, and that people are not taking all the money that's being designated for healthcare, instead of it going to the patients, they're putting in their pocket. We got to put a stop to that. So I appreciate your attention, and please sign up for the newsletter, go to the website. Any questions, once again, please direct them in the question box. Your questions will be answered, but you all have a great evening. Thank you. God bless.